Thank you everybody for coming on a Friday night. It's amazing to see so many friends here. Is the mic working? No. Okay. Hey Sam, can people hear me? Okay, without it? Okay. I wanted to thank Sam Eckhart for inviting me to do this exhibition and for letting me have the giant wall, the amazing wall, and for Sherry and to all the people at AVA for supporting this exhibition. It's amazing to be here. It's such a great space, and it's so nice to have, okay, louder. I have a soft voice, and so I'll try. Just scream if I'm not loud enough. But really, it's been a real pleasure to be in this exhibit. I wish that Yansu and Jihei could have been here to speak to you about their work as well, because they are truly amazing artists as well. And it's great to have ceramics in this gallery. So I'm a pretty busy teacher at Dartmouth, and I did have the day off today to collect my thoughts, and so I wrote them down. So I'm going to kind of read a little bit first and then talk about the pieces individually. And if at that point, some people haven't seen the show, if some people want to come up and look closer, it's good with me. So it is my intention to complicate your idea of what ceramics is. In my work, I'm using age-old techniques and glazes, but twisting and shifting things to try to be contemporary, to try to be part of an expanding field. So I feel a sense of obligation to work this way because of my relationship to the field, the way I've been taught, and the privilege I've had to work and study with many, many amazing ceramic artists. My concepts, technology, and processes of ceramics have been evolving over time, but one thing has been kind of constant, that most of all, I want a visual impact. As I work, I try to be open to what occurs, not just what I imagine or what I design. My experience helps me to hone the ability to notice what's amazing within the medium. So sometimes it's an occurrence, and as opposed to what you might expect to see. And I try to let the process and chance be elements in the studio as well as in the kiln. And I try to use my mistakes, sometimes cracked, broken, scraps, as elements in the work. And so some of the questions end up being, is it still pretty if you use those things? The cracked things, the broken things. Is it just pretty? Because as we all know, there is ambiguity in beauty. There's always the question, does it have to be well crafted to be beautiful? And is the thin line between ugly and beauty, is that relevant or important? Another sort of underlying aspect for me is I want the work to be not too cultivated, more like it just happened, even though there actually, believe it or not, is a lot of choreography and involved in making it happen. I do sort of want to make it look like it just appeared and out of nowhere, even though it didn't. And so sort of like how the wind lets things fall and pieces land softly. The placement becomes organic, and there's a lightness or floaty kind of feeling. So those are things I strive for, sort of a light touch. But yeah, there is actually a lot of work in pretty much every piece that I have here. For people that know ceramics, they know that it's a trial and error process. There are a lot of failures. Not every piece works out, and you know, you have to take the failures with the successes. So that's part of it, and it can be, you know, hard to learn that, painful to learn that. I do think ceramics is a bit like cooking. It can always be better, and it is always becoming, basically. It's a journey. I've been on this journey for a long time, and I'm still in it, I guess. And like in cooking, I think it helps to focus on the process, and that keeps you kind of going to the next thing. So, as we all know, living in New Hampshire, beauty is all around us. And for me, anyway, it's not always what you think, not the obvious. It's not always like a distant vista. It's a closer look. And a lot of the things that I look at are things that are just there randomly. So they're often at ground level at my feet, and slowing down, taking the time to look at things and focusing on what's around me has sort of been what has driven quite a lot of this work, and that did increase a little bit during the pandemic when I was home quite a lot. So my environment, rural New Hampshire, is an inspiration, and Ground Cover, which is the title of that piece, is one of the things that I look at, as well as wildflowers that sprout up even in gravel around fieldstones. Things that are carried places without obvious intention. So I'm fascinated by things like that. Dispersal, scattering, spreading, random pop-ups. Some of the pieces here, like these two in particular, are kind of about the absolute absurdity of working in clay today. And, you know, it's an ages-old art, as you know, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you have to question whether it still makes sense to work this way with all the technology that we have. So I think in a way there's a fight against perfectionism and a way of being anti-perfectionism, embracing imperfection or imperfectness, and that in a way can give an object more life. So this defies industrialism a little bit, because we all know what perfect ceramic, industrial-made ceramics look like, and we all have them. And a lot of people want to make that, and I'm kind of the opposite, that I embrace imperfections and try to make something balanced, but not perfect. And I do think that imperfectness does let you in a different way. Just the same way, you know, maybe perforations let you in. And this is all just kind of trusting in the process. So I think it's probably good to sort of talk about each piece and kind of go through it. And I know some people haven't seen the show, so if people want to walk through it and come closer and not sit, I think that's fine too. If you want to see it closer, but either way works for me. Let's see. And I also, if people want to ask me questions, I have seen Yansu work, so I do have an idea of how he makes things, and so I could try. I could try to answer the questions about his work. I don't know too much about Jihei's work, but I also could try, because I know people have technical questions. And I don't know if people saw titles, but I can go through the titles as well. The numbers didn't end up in chronological order, so this one is called Landing Pad, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory about having a garden and growing things and having creatures that spread pollen and sort of loving that process.
Excuse me, Jenny, can you repeat the title again?
For this one?
Yeah.
Landing Pad.
Landing Pad.
Yeah. Yes?
Before we look at all of these, there's one really noticeable thing for me that I wondered if you could address, which is your choice of color, based on the fact that you're looking at nature and you're being inspired by this. And there's definitely a restricted choice in what you're looking at. And can you just say what led you to this vision?
It's hard to answer, Marga, but I've been working in black and white for quite a long time, you know, and I've changed clays. Like these are all, everything here is high fire. And I used to use red clay, which had a warm color input, but I'm not using that right now. But I am looking at nature, but I'm not representing nature, you know. I guess that's pretty obvious. But so I'm inspired by it, but I guess I'm just not thinking in color, you know. And I have, in the past, I have used a lot of color, bright color, in my undergraduate days particularly. But I guess I pretty much think about it in just black and white, in very contrasty terms, you know. And I've added a couple of colors, but also there are technically the ceramic palette, especially at high temperature, and so this is all like high temperature porcelain temperature 2,300 degrees, you know, what you can fire to that temperature is different than room temperature things like paint. And so it's not that you can't have reds and yellows at this temperature, but it's a whole different technology, really. And what I've been doing, and it really has been since I went to China, and I went to the birthplace of Celadon and worked there for 7 weeks, and I was using the traditional porcelain, which is amazing, really hard to work with, but I just you know, got back into high fire after that. That was in 2017, and I guess I just feel an inclination to use the high temperature glazes and try to get something out of those. And usually for those Asian ceramics, there wouldn't be like bright colors unless they were added later. They would be enameled at a low temperature later. And yeah, or lusters or things are another firing. And yeah, I haven't gotten into that, but so yeah, really simple palette is what I've been doing. Just with a black glaze. So there's maybe 2 or 3 black glazes here, maybe 4. But a lot of them are the same black matte glaze that I use in different ways. And that glaze, for me, is absorbing, like the way your solar panels are absorbing. And the shinier black glaze is reflective, so the opposite. And so I'm mostly using that kind of simple way of adding surface. But yeah, who knows? Maybe someday I'll have a whole different palette, but not at the moment. So this piece here is called "What is Your Footprint?" And that is sort of pretty obvious, I think. But it is, I think it's really about the guilt of doing high fire ceramics, you know, firing to a high temperature in a fuel burning kiln is, you know, it's not good for the carbon footprint, and people tend to think that ceramics is, you know, back to the earth and everything, but you know, and glazes, you know, glaze ingredients come from, some of them come from faraway places, and there's a lot of tragedy associated, like with cobalt, which most of it's going into our phones and batteries, but it's been part of ceramics forever, but most of it comes from Congo, and it kind of ruined the country to have people mine it, and still happening. But so yeah, and you know, moving heavy things around, transporting things is not great for the environment, as we all know, and so that piece is really about just questioning it, like, is it okay? I mean, some people that are really conscious about sustainability wouldn't even fire their work, because that would be better. And a lot of people are using wild clay, local clays, and some of them are quite amazing. But I couldn't do this work without the materials that come from other places, and for the glazes and the clays. So I'll just keep going, and please do ask questions if you want. So this one's called Whirl, and it's a pretty new piece, and it has a lot of individual parts to it that are all fused together with glaze. Somebody asked me, maybe it was Sandy, whether I make the pieces for the piece, or whether I grab random things and put them together. And the answer is both. And usually it's because I make what I think I might need, and then I usually need more. And so I do have like a lot of extra pieces around. Yes.
Do you fire them all together, all at once?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. For the glaze fire, not for the bisque fire.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, I see. So you do it separately, and then the final one, you use the glaze to cement it.
Yeah, for a lot of them, for some of them. Yeah. It works sometimes. It doesn't work all the time. It depends a little bit. Yeah, so let's see. This one's called Tendril, and this one has, you know, the perforations in the clay, which I think does let you in a little bit. This one here, there's a couple of other ones that are kind of related, and these are all different flower titles. That one's flower with dots, and I don't even remember. I think this one's flower 1 and the other one's flower 2. And these are really recent, and some of these came out of the kiln like the day before I put them on the wall, and so they're pretty recent. This one is called Turbulence, and it's one of the older ones, and addressing seed dispersal. This one here and the one on the end, those are called Reflection 2 and Reflection, and this is the mirror glaze that's on the underneath there, and again, I think sort of self-explanatory that you're, trying to think about what you're doing. This one here is called Plant or Animal, and I think Joni said that to me, when you saw it once. Plant or animal, and it's because it could be either. This piece here is called Blue Skies, and it's pretty recent and self-explanatory after the many months of rain we had this summer. This one's called Scattered and Burst. This one's called Fragments. This one's called Excess and Screen. This one's ground cover, which I mentioned. Some of these spreading plants just kind of go over everything. I love that you can, I have a lot of ceramics outside because I can't store everything, and the ground cover plants just go right over them, and even if they're pretty high, they just disappear. It's kind of amazing. This one's called Volunteers. This is table flower, blue cone flower, bramble. I think this one here is, this one shows what I mean when I try to incorporate in not just studio practice, but also trying to, in a way, choreograph what the kiln will do. So with porcelain, when it's very, very thin, it is almost always going to warp. And so if you try to get it to warp the way you want it, which works sometimes, kind of placing things so that they'll end up where you want them or close to where you want them is what I try to do with that. And it's tricky and quite fun. But yes.
This one that you're just talking about, with the porcelain drooping, slumping down, and getting it in that right space again, did you then glaze it before you fired it so that it would adhere with that droop, or did you have to? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a question of, you know, the temperature in the kiln and how much droop, and some of those they're curled the other way before you start, so it goes a long way.
What's your success rate?
50%, maybe. Oops. Yeah. Maybe, it's hard to say. It depends a lot. It's a little bit easier with stoneware than it is with porcelain, and that is one of the things I did learn in China, is that even when you're like rolling a coil in porcelain, it's going like this instead of going down. It's kind of amazing, and but it's just such a beautiful material.
Does it ever surprise you and end up with
yeah.
something more beautiful than you thought it would be?
Yeah, absolutely. When you get it just right, it's amazing, and when you get it wrong, it cracks. That's pretty much it. And then the last two are over here. These do not have glaze on them, and so I think a lot of people know a body of work that I've done of small sculptural vessels that were low fired all with terra sigillata on them and burnished. And out of the techniques that Native American ceramics and Greek and many, many cultures throughout the world use, and these are a little bit closer to that because they aren't glazed, so that is terra sigillata on those, but high fired. And so yeah, I've been concentrating on the high fire just because it has more strength, and the breakability of really low fire work is just, I still do it sometimes, but it's kind of scary. It's so fragile and it's fired so low. To get the shine from the burnished clay, you have to really, really go low, and it's super breakable. So I'm just always trying to balance my thoughts on fragility. Like how fragile can it be, and do you feel good about it? And so this is the opposite. Like these will be, pretty durable and around forever, and is that a good thing? Maybe not. But yeah, and so anybody have any questions about? Yeah, Kathy.
So this appears to be almost like a series of work, a body of work. And is that what you tend to do, is work for a while in one sort of mode and then switch? And when are you sort of still exploring in this mode, and are you thinking of heading in another direction at some point? Or
Yeah, I change directions a lot, and like Anna Hepler, who's the artist in residence at Dartmouth right now, she had a great word for it. Restless. She said she's restless. So she's amazing. She switches materials like all the time. And I'm not that brave at all. And I pretty much just work in ceramics. But yeah, I've been working on the wall pieces for about 5 years, I guess. And I'm still in it. I still have a lot of things that I want to try, and it is that the next one's always going to be better. You're always sort of propelled forward that you want to try something else, and so you do a few, and it gives you ideas, and I haven't done as many that are pieces that you look down on, and I'll probably do some of those. But yeah, it's sort of, in ceramics, working in a series is kind of the best way to go, because there are a lot of them that are rejects, and I didn't show you those, And so, and then sometimes you can kind of mine parts of them to use in something else, and that feels like a good sustainable thing to do, instead of throwing them outside. But yeah, and just because my time is limited in the studio, I haven't been doing the real low fire sculptural vessels lately, and just concentrating on the high fire pieces. And so yeah, I think I'll probably be doing more of these. Did that answer your question? Enough. Anybody else?
So I was wondering, so you really think these as wall pieces rather than...
Yeah, I kind of look at each one individually and decide if it should be viewed this way or by looking down. Yeah.
It's great to see so many together.
It is. It is, and it's really quite. I'm grateful for this opportunity, really, for showing a lot of pieces together, because that doesn't happen every day. That you get to show this many, and Sam was great in letting me put a lot of them there, and letting me kind of figure out the placement, and I love her word constellation of them, because every time you put them up, it's different. It's a different order. So they are all on a wire on the back, and so they're the ceramic buttons on the back that a wire goes through. So you hang them. So it's not that hard. They hang pretty easily. These are pretty easy to transport, unless they have pieces that are fragile pieces that are sticking up. They're pretty easy. These are hard. These ones here, you have to just make sure that they're wrapped really well, and yeah, those are harder. But these are pretty easy, and I have shipped them like cross country, and yeah, they're not heavy, most of them. These are heavier, but yeah, they're not too hard. Yeah.
I had one other question. Do you use a rolling pin, or do you use a press to get your clay initially so thin to work with?
For the thin slabs?
Yeah.
So I do own a slab roller, and I do use it sometimes. But I use a mallet, so I use a mallet to pound out the slabs, and that is the best way. I mean, in graduate school, we walked them out, and we weren't allowed to use a slab roller, and you would use your body weight to walk them out, and yeah, well, and I made really big pieces back then, but and foot wedging is done that way. Japanese man taught me to foot wedge. That's how you would wedge, 500 pounds of clay at once, and so. But I use a mallet, and I do teach like every student at Dartmouth to do this, like use a Chinese mallet to pound out a slab. And you could use your hand just as well, or your fist.
So it's thin enough to put through the slab roller?
Yeah, so that would be the way to, and the slab roller just really like evens it out, but you can do it just as easy with sticks and a rolling pin for the final thing. So it's really like rolling out a pie crust, But the mallet makes the clay particles really bond together tighter, and so that's why you start by really pounding it instead of, because you're rolling it, you're just getting the top surface. So you really want to have the slab be strong, and so that's really important with what I'm doing, because the cracking otherwise, and it has to be even, but and then for really thin slabs you can use what's called a pony roller. It's like a brayer for printmaking. Just a printmaking brayer will work, so something small. But I make a lot of little pieces, and just really quick things, and I just pinch most things, and And really, like a lot of the little things, you know, were, I guess, originally done when you don't have a lot of time and you just want to do a little something, and then you can build it up and accumulate it without having a lot of studio time to do it. So working in spurts and little increments is kind of helpful. And yeah, it's really quite relaxing to pinch things. You can walk around while you do it. And so, yeah, I'm a hand builder. That's how I do everything. Yeah, Tim.
I have some maybe edging on technical questions. Would you like to entertain those now or after?
Whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you use a combustion kiln?
Yes.
Gas fire?
Gas kiln, yes.
Gas kiln?
Mm-hmm.
And so you fire to cone 10, 9?
10.
10. And what is your clay rating for? 12?
10.
You know, I'm not seeing a lot of sagging.
Porcelain sagging.
Huh?
Porcelain sagging. It's rated for 10, and yeah, 10, 9, 10. It's kind of the same.
Yeah. And then in the pieces in back of us, you use terracotta. Is that a terracotta that's made with cone 10 clay?
Ball clay.
Just ball clay. With colors.
Yeah.
It still says
Definitely goes to cone 10 quite easily, yeah. And
I'm just surprised that it's still smooth.
it's still smooth. It's not as shiny as it would be if I fired it really low. You know, the burnishing, you lose it the higher temperature you go. So if you want it to be really glossy and have that beautiful shine, you can't go that high.
Yeah.
But so
Me
there.
educating me well. I'll tell my students in the future about this.
Sunny.
I'm not, being a ceramicist, I understand that the whole kind of precedence in the history, it's like alchemy and all the knowledge of all the techniques. Your talk was one of the most informative and like really beautiful talk that I've heard. And you started off talking about like this burden of the knowledge that you know as a ceramicist, doing the work for years of how things work, clay and always like firing, and have heard that, and then to have you tie into a personal kind of experience here in New Hampshire of seeing things sprout and grow, and just the titles that I hear, it's just like such a kind of joyful, and you talked about this idea of beauty and like breaking the boundary of the tradition of what's perfection and then try to defy and try to invent something new, and this idea of beauty and but then put on something that is crude. And it's really kind of, I mean, for me, I've known you for almost 20 years, and to hear that, it's like, it's so wonderful to know and to see your work, you know, like a really kind of more insightful way. And I think one of the questions somebody asked about, you know, you're talking about this like growth and spring and color, and then your work in this kind of monochromatic. And it's, yeah, I've seen that the kind of the high temperature clay and the stuff that you work with, and yeah, I mean, it's, for me, I guess the question is, like, I've noticed these kind of very, like, cut out, looks like you're, you know, we were talking about pounding and rolling clays, but then I also noticed, like, these kind of, like, I could see you're kind of, like, almost like, you're going at it with this, like, object, cutting out silhouettes, and then putting that on your pieces. So I'm interested in kind of hearing about, you know, this organic nature, but then there's this kind of almost like a collage or this kind of like silhouette. You want to make sure there's like this cut glass in your pieces. Yeah, so like, yeah, I wanted to like that kind of activity of just like cutting into it, and much as you want things to be, you know, fluid and organic, and yeah, I'm interested in hearing about like what that is to you.
Yeah, good question. Impossible to answer. Yeah, I mean, as you know, when you're taught to work in a soft material, you're taught to like take care of all the edges and do things properly. And I guess at a certain point, you feel like you need to deconstruct all those things. And is it fine if you just rip the edge and you don't, or cut it and leave the cut mark, and that has a different look, because sometimes the more you do, the worse it gets, and so just sometimes you have to just let it happen. And but yeah, I think there's always a conflict of like trying to balance all that stuff, like all the things you know how to do, but are those things tired? Have you like done that too many times? And how do you choreograph all those things? And I think the decisions are mostly intuitive. You're just kind of going with it and hoping it works out, and dealing with it if it doesn't. And so, yeah, it's a endless process. It's never, there's never a like really careful solution, But
I think that seeing raw edge, sharp edges is intentional. It's like very kind of different, It's really kind of like, it's a whole nother level of thinking about your pieces. Like, really think about the raw to be raw, the sharp edges to be sharp edge. Really nice. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Those scraps, some of when you cut something out and you take away the extra, sometimes like the scraps look better than what you just cut out. And
I love the cooking reference, but also there's a lot of baking.
Baking?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to never bake for that reason. It's like you could not get me to roll out something, but now I do a little more. But yeah, like Magdalena Dundo, who some of us know, who's an amazing ceramic artist. She says for her it's gardening. Her process is like gardening. So it's something that's endless, never done, but it's just sort of a kind of a letting go, I think, kind of activity. And yeah, Bente.
Well, Jenny, I just want to express my gratitude to you for how you have been involved with Eva for so many years.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned I think you said something about durability. You questioned whether it's good or not. Well, I have to say something about durability, because when I started working with Eva in 1986, was in a holiday exhibition, and you had some magnificent work, and I fell so in love with it, and I bought one of your bowls. And to this day, it continues to feed me with such love, both as an aesthetic object and as a useful object.
Yeah.
So, there you have the durability of things.